Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely massive: India's incredible biological diversity and the super intricate ways this giant ecosystem is maintained, managed, and fiercely protected. We share this planet with millions of other living beings, right? From tiny microscopic bacteria to ancient banyan trees, towering elephants, and massive blue whales. But keeping this complex web intact, especially in a nation as diverse as India, well, that requires a really fascinating blend of top-down government policy and some seriously powerful bottom-up community action. I am so thrilled to take you on this journey today. To truly grasp conservation here, we really have to understand the historical and cultural reverence for nature that's been around for centuries. Just listen to these words from a traditional Lepcha folk song. Let me gather your music from the springs, the rivers, the mountains, the forests, the insects, and the animals. It's such a beautifully poetic, reverent way of framing the historically harmonious relationship between human beings and nature in this region. The diverse flora and fauna we're going to talk about today, they aren't just natural resources. They've been deeply, fundamentally integrated into the cultural and daily life of the subcontinent for generations. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. First up, the complex web of life. Second, the push for conservation. Third, we'll put a spotlight on Project Tiger. Fourth, classifying India's forests. And finally, we'll wrap up with the power of community action. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The complex web of life. Let's lay out the philosophical and practical stakes here and ask the big question: why does this all matter in the first place? So, biodiversity. It isn't just about having a bunch of different animals and plants. It's really about how these immensely diverse forms of life are closely integrated into a single system through multiple overlapping networks of interdependencies. And here's the kicker: we humans are just one part of this massive ecological puzzle. Think about it. The plants, the animals, the microorganisms, they literally recreate the quality of the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the soil that produces our food. Without them, we simply cannot survive. Forests are absolutely crucial here as the primary producers. But as we'll see, India's incredibly rich flora and fauna, which potentially represents hundreds of thousands of undiscovered species, are currently under severe stress. And a lot of that is due to widespread environmental insensitivity. Section 2. The push for conservation. With rapid ecological decline becoming literally impossible to ignore, how did authorities actually react? Conservation is absolutely essential to preserve our life support systems and genetic diversity. So let's trace how India's legislative action actually evolved. Back in the 1960s and 70s, conservationists were sounding the alarm, heavily demanding a national protection program. And this momentum culminated in 1972 with the implementation of the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. This was a massive, game-changing turning point. The act outright banned hunting, it gave legal protection to habitats, and it heavily restricted trade in wildlife to protect endangered species. Over time, central and state governments started establishing national parks and sanctuaries targeting specific threatened animals, like the one-horned rhinoceros, various crocodiles, and the Asiatic lion. But what's really fascinating is how the scope of this protection expanded. By the 1980s, the focus shifted from just protecting major mammals to looking at biodiversity as a whole, adding hundreds of butterflies, moths, and beetles to the protected lists. And then, by 1991, plant species were added for the very first time. And the real-world impact of those legislative efforts is just incredible to see. Threatened biotypes like the one-horned rhinoceros and massive herds of deer are actually thriving now in protected habitats like the Kaziranga National Park. By establishing these protected national parks, the government gave these magnificent creatures the physical space and the crucial legal shield that they desperately needed to recover from the brink of extreme depletion. Section 3. Spotlight on Project Tiger. To really understand the true scale of these government interventions, we need to look at a specific, super high-stakes example. 1827. Just sit with that number for a second. By 1973, authorities realized that the tiger population in India had plummeted to this incredibly low figure. To put that into perspective, at the turn of the century, the estimated population was 55,000. That is an absolute ecological collapse. The major threats driving this extinction event were coming from all sides. Poaching for trade, rapidly shrinking habitats, depletion of their prey, and a booming human population. Because India and Nepal host about 2/3 of the world's surviving tiger population, they became prime targets for illegal trading, particularly for tiger skins and bones, which are used in traditional medicines in some Asian countries. So, in response to this crisis, the government launched Project Tiger in 1973. It quickly became one of the most well-publicized wildlife campaigns in the world. But here is the absolutely critical takeaway. Project Tiger wasn't just about saving a single, beautiful species. No, it was a massive, calculated effort to preserve entire biotypes of sizable magnitude. Think about it. By saving an apex predator like the tiger, you inherently have to save the forests they live in and the prey they eat. It's a domino effect. This holistic approach led to the establishment of key reserves all across the country. We're talking about the Corbett National Park in Uttarakhand, the Sundarbans in West Bengal, Bandhavgarh in Madhya Pradesh, Sariska in Rajasthan, Manas in Assam, and Periyar in Kerala. The whole shebang. Section 4. Classifying India's forests. Because protecting wildlife is really only half the battle. You also have to manage the actual land itself. Let's see how the government organizes this vast territory. The crucial point here is understanding exactly how the state categorizes this land for management and regulation. Basically, forests are divided into 3 main categories. First up, we have reserved forests, and these cover more than half of the total forest land. These are considered the absolute most valuable for conserving wildlife and are maintained as permanent forest estates. Second, we have protected forests. These make up almost 1/3 of the forest area, and they are designated specifically to prevent any further depletion. Finally, there are the unclassed forests. This category makes up the remaining wastelands and forests, which actually belong to a mix of the government, local communities, and private individuals. And keep in mind, this distribution varies wildly across the country. For example, Madhya Pradesh holds the largest area under permanent forests, accounting for a massive 75% of its total forest area. Section 5. Power of community action. Top-down government policy is absolutely vital, for sure, but it's really not the whole story. We have to look at the highly empowering bottom-up solutions driven by local citizens. Often, it's easy to ignore the fact that India's forests are home to traditional communities who rely on them directly to survive day to day. In many areas, local communities are struggling to conserve these habitats alongside, or sometimes even against, government officials. They recognize that conservation is literally the only way to secure their own long-term livelihood. A phenomenal example of this is happening right in the Alwar district of Rajasthan. The inhabitants of 5 villages there actually took matters into their own hands and declared 1,200 hectares of forest as the Bhairadiv Dek of Sanctuary. They explicitly rejected outside government involvement, declared their own strict anti-hunting rules and regulations, and now they vigorously protect the wildlife from any outside encroachments entirely by themselves. It's incredible. And this kind of local stewardship has led to massive, nationwide impacts. Grassroots conservation victories are everywhere if you know where to look. Take the famous Chipko movement in the Himalayas. They didn't just successfully resist deforestation, they proved that community afforestation with indigenous species works brilliantly. Then you have farmers and citizens groups like the Bij Bachao Andolan in Terry and Navdanya. They've completely proven that ecological farming, meaning producing adequate levels of diversified crops without synthetic chemicals, is totally possible and economically viable. The government has actually recognized this power, institutionalizing it through the Joint Forest Management, or JFM program. This formally involves local communities in the management and restoration of degraded forests. When everyday people recognize that the environment is directly tied to their own survival, they become its ultimate unyielding protectors. So we've covered the vast ecological web, the crucial legal frameworks, the massive government projects, and the undeniable power of community action. But I want to leave you with this really profound quote. "The tree is a peculiar organism of unlimited kindness and benevolence. It affords protection to all beings, offering shade even to the axemen who destroy it." I think it's just a beautiful summary of the immense giving nature of our environment. The provocative question we all must ask ourselves now is, how can we, in our own daily lives, emulate this benevolence, step away from being the axemen, and become better stewards of our shared ecological web? Something to think about. Thank you so much for exploring this vital topic with me today.